Good morning, folks. I hope you enjoyed your tea and coffee and the individually wrapped shortbread. I made the mistake of opening the individually wrapped shortbread across one of the tops of that black tablecloths. It's astonishing what a statement you can make on a black tablecloth with just one piece of shortbread. They may have to throw the table out, and I'm kind of hoping that they don't individually wrap the mushrooms vol au vents, which is about the only reason I come here, because it's going to get really embarrassing ordering them all. I have very little to do in this session other than to introduce the person who's going to chair this session, who's Nicola Anderson, CEO, Fintech Scotland. So Nicola, you take over from there.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mark. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just checking my watch to make sure I'm saying good morning. Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome, and thank you for joining us. And thank you to my expert panel that have stepped in and are going to have this fantastic discussion with us today as we think about the role of fintech in supporting citizens and businesses during COVID. As we explore this topic, we're going to hear from these guys drawing on their lived experiences over the last 18 months. We will encourage you to ask questions, and we'll ask those questions right from the outset. So please get your thinking caps on. We'll be delighted to hear those questions as soon as possible. All of these guys come from an extensive background in financial services, in business, in startups, in entrepreneurial development, in innovation, working with our citizens, our businesses, and thinking about our economy and our society. What more do we need as we really explore this topic about the role of fintech as we think about the impact on people and businesses during COVID-19? Each of the guys will introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Richie as we then go down to Christian, Lynne, and Stuart. A very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining me. And Richie, maybe you'd introduce yourself and Amiqus and give us your thoughts initially on that conversation.
Yes, everybody hear me okay? Yeah, thanks for having me along today. So Richie Stewart, I am Senior Commercial Manager with Amiqus. We are a 6-year-old tech company based in Edinburgh. We make ID and compliance verification software. So the idea behind Amiqus, a cloud-based platform, the reason we were set up was to help provide access to services and information for people. Our CEO Callum had difficulty in the past gaining access to legal services, accountancy services in a previous business venture, and it's something that he was really passionate about. So over the last 6 years, we have worked with a number of legal organisations. We're supporting financial services companies doing AML checks, accountancy practices. I think the big thing for us over the last 18 months has been, well, the adoption of digital services, and also the opportunity for us to provide a service to people and to businesses. The pandemic allowed us to pivot slightly from the work we were doing. Traditionally, it was all focused on AML. What we had recognised probably about a year before the pandemic was the similarities between AML checking and right-to-work checks. A lot of similar checks that people have to go through, and through plugging into some new data sources, we managed to kind of pivot to start providing right-to-work checks. It was quite opportune, I suppose, for us. During the pandemic, there was opportunities arose to support the Scottish Government and also the NHS with their staff onboarding, and doing that in a completely remote and digital manner. With the NHS in England and Wales, we supported their the vaccinators. They had to recruit vaccinators, and basically the process they were using was a previous manual process of getting them to send in documents via post to an operations centre where it was manually checked. So we were able to digitalise that, and on the back of that have obviously supported the full vaccination process across the north of England, that is, with some of the NHS trusts. But we've now moved into a 3-year contract with NHS in England and Wales, supporting them on a wider scale. So it's been well, yeah, it doesn't sound great to say, I suppose, an opportunity that arose out of obviously a terrible situation, but for us and for digital enhancements, it's been transformational.
Wonderful. Richie, what a great experience there, taking your capability and thinking about that application more broadly. And great that you were supporting the vaccine rollout, which is definitely helping us all roll out of this situation for sure. Thank you very much. Christian, you're very welcome. I'm going to turn to you as you talk to us a little bit about Visible Capital and what your thoughts are on the opportunity and the role for fintech in this place.
Perfect. Yeah. Morning, everybody. Nice to be at the house. First time in a while. So I'm Christian from Visible Capital. So we're primarily a B2B financial technology company looking at the sort of wealth management space. So it's looking at how we can better use data in order to get people sort of better financial advice, get them onboarded, get the full understanding of them in there. So naturally, I think people are becoming more open to different ways of working. So to begin with, we're looking at using open banking, very straightforward. Instead of filling out the forms and everything, just pull your open banking data through, have it put directly into your back office system. What we discovered in the last 18 months is it shifted quite quickly towards once people were sort of had their feet under the table and said, well, actually, it's a different discussion now, because previously a lot of what would sort of stymie fintech adoption in bigger companies was, you're looking at the risk of adopting something new, taking on sort of additional risks, new companies, new ways of working. But then actually that flipped and said, actually, the risk is that we don't do this, because once your old processes go out the window, it is a very delicate thing to then actually, how do you continue to serve your customers? How do you continue to treat customers fairly and give them the services that they need, and make sure they can still access financial advice and move that forward? And then that has really carried on. So I think once people have kind of like working from home, once people have sort of tried it, done it, there's greater comfort. So I see that continuing. And now the focus has really moved from that sort of initial thing of onboarding and understanding customers to actually what's our data strategy? How do you look at Uber, Facebook, Instagram, how they can sort of understand their customers and move around that, and then say, well, actually, how do we do that in financial services? So it's been an interesting 18 months, and
Excellent. Thanks, Christian. And it's really interesting to hear, isn't it, as we think about how people have stepped up to embrace the digital opportunity, but equally thoughtful about data and how we think about data going forward. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lynne, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Please tell us all a little bit more about yourself, about Know It, and your thoughts on this topic.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Again, it's really lovely to see humans again and interact with people. Yes, I'm Lynne Darcey Quigley, CEO and founder of Know It, very new to the fintech space. We actually only launched our product on Monday. Yes, I don't understand why I'm here. So yeah, we are a credit management platform. We are very much embedded in the SME, how they manage their risk, their debtor days, reduce their cash flow, and get the money paid. Myself have been in the credit management industry for 25 years. So the biggest pain point for SMEs is actually getting paid, making sure they're invoicing in time, the terms are correct. They are actually mitigating the credit risk at the front end. And what we found over the last 18 months, with a lot of remote business going on, people have forgot we really don't need a credit application form anymore. We should forget this. We shouldn't credit check. We just need the business. There was an air of desperation, I have to say, certainly within the SME market, of how they get how they get paid, how they take business, how they do business. So with Know It and working on the platform for the last 18 months and developing that credit management space for people to comfortably go in and check out their customer, look at the customer, use the data, see what their credit score is, take them through the fundamentals, get to do business with them, and then actually get paid at the end. So I found the last 18 months have been incredibly tough for the SME. Digital adoption is a tough one for the SME market. But getting them onto the platform is something that's really, really critical for us, and getting paid, so we can continue on with business. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Thank you, Lynne. And your insight on the SME market is exactly why you're here today. And
Yeah.
the fact that you have launched Know It this week, congratulations. 18 months of really hard work to get to this place.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Stuart, you're very welcome. Definitely not last, but definitely not least. Let me turn to you then as you talk to us a little bit about yourself and Lending Crowd and your thoughts on this topic.
Yep. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for having me. We're an SME lending platform, Lending Crowd. We've been around for about 7 years now and have about 85 million of lending to date. So we entered lockdown with a loan book of about 45 million, 650 borrowers. So 3,500 retail lenders and institutional lenders as well on the platform. So we clearly had quite a lot to do to make sure that everybody was comfortable with what was happening, that we were there to support, and the 650 borrowers. And the first thing that we did was set a challenge that we would speak to every single one of them within the first 6 weeks of lockdown. So we refocused a lot of the team onto doing that, and we weren't satisfied with just having emails going out and email communication. We wanted to speak with every single one and assess what was going on and what support we could then bring through. As a direct result of that, we launched forbearance, which was basically giving repayment holidays, started with interest-only periods, these sorts of things, which then led to actually a strengthening of our own business, but a strengthening of the ability of our own ability to support these companies. So actually the result of that has been phenomenal in terms of the book has continued to perform, the borrowers, the support they've had has been very helpful. The investors, we were able to communicate directly with them and keep them satisfied that by being transparent, by being open with them about the actions we were taking, that we continued with their confidence. That was, I think, that approach, that flipping the resource into that has been phenomenal. I've been really proud to have been part of that and to have been driving that. But I think the other point here is around the team members. And that was another focus that we had right from the start, was how do we support people? How do we keep productivity high? How do we actually manage to execute on behalf of our clients? And the first thing I said was, I want video calls every time, not phone calls. From day one of lockdown, let's communicate in as much as we possibly can with seeing each other and try our best to keep that link going. And that's been really successful. So I think the technology backdrop and the ability to switch into that very quickly and nimbly has been of great support. But then the mental health piece, which continues. I mean, that's obviously a theme that's been talked about a lot, but we're very focused on that as well, because if we don't have a productive, happy team, or we're supporting them, then how can we support our clients? So there was a real focus from a management perspective on that aspect as well, and that has, I think, served our stakeholders very well.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Stuart. Wow, what a great introduction, actually, from helping us with the vaccine. Thank you very much, Amiqus, to making sure that people are thinking about their financial futures at Visible Capital, and to really then helping businesses move forward throughout a really difficult period, as well as then think about their financial future. Lynne and Stuart, thank you. And Stuart, I think your points are really well made about how we think about our teams as well, and the role of technology in that space. I will come to the audience in a second in case there are any questions from anyone. Please just raise your hand or virtually. But I suppose one question that I have to kick us off is about how your customers actually have embraced this opportunity. What's the kind of feedback that you're getting from people or from those conversations as we look for that change that you're driving but they're embracing, perhaps? Richie, shall we start with you?
Yeah, I would say overall very positive. I mean, I suppose a lot of our existing customers had already adopted a digital approach. We're already, pushing the sort of technology angle. We traditionally worked in the legal and accountancy sectors, and I suppose there were already a number of forward-thinking businesses who were engaging with us and obviously had bought into the use of technology. I think the big change was we had a number of prospective clients who we'd been speaking to for a good while, who'd always been a little bit hesitant and had always had question marks over, how their consumers and clients would buy into the digital journey. And I think that essentially forced their hand to look at it. It took away the option. But I think the big positive has been that pretty much all the clients who were of that opinion are now saying that they wouldn't go back to the old way. And, you know, they've really bought into the digital journey. They recognise the advantages that it brings to their clients, the quality of service that they can operate or they can offer their clients, and also the cost effectiveness of it as well. So I'd say it has forced the hands of a number of organisations or clients of ours, but yeah, overall very, very positive.
Positively engaged. And Stuart, are you seeing the same thing as you think about your customers and that engagement?
Yes, I'm starting to actually I think see people looking into next year as being, you know, things lifting and how do we operate, investment going back in again. So we're now reopened essentially. We were lending under the CBILS scheme, so we became a CBILS accredited lender, but really back to normalising again, looking ahead. So investment decisions being made, and where do we take it from here? So from an application perspective and money going out the door, is definitely a normalisation occurring, although we're not quite there yet. I think we've got a few months yet of uncertainty to come around, depending on the sector of a business, particularly I'm talking about then the SMEs, and we're looking at is still sector dependent to a large extent. So different levels of uncertainty as a result.
Thank you. And then we talked about this a little bit this morning, actually, about the SME engagement with digital and that opportunity that you see. Do you want to share a few thoughts on that?
Yeah, over the last 6 months, we've been working quite closely with Help to Grow for the government, and they obviously surveyed, you know, the SME, typically within engineering and construction, which I'm quite embedded in, and their digital adoption is really poor. Purely just down to the fact that they are on tools, they're on site, there's not a lot of opportunity to be office based and have that interaction in their business and adopt it so easily. There's also the action of change and bringing in systems and being retrained. So there's a big hesitation. The government have noticed it. Obviously, with the position I'm in, I'm a really good barometer for every business coming into us because we deal with every sector. So, probably like Stuart said, there's a lot of sectors that have just went lovely and seamlessly straight into the digital adoption, and they've been really good with it. But there's just other traditional industries that it just hasn't been easy for them. And it's been really difficult. And I think that's where most help will be needed in the SME, is that traditional business just can't do it as easy as how we feel we can do it, so.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, and it reminds me of something from the earlier sessions today as we think about that human factor, as we take forward fintech, and I suppose the language that we use and how we engage.
Completely alien to most of them. I think obviously tax digital has helped a lot. Having that force where you need to do your VAT and your tax, and it's been forced onto those those accounting set platforms. But that's only an office level. You need a full business to engage in it. So from operations to risk, you need the full business to be able to take it. So I think that there's an argument on both sides. It's been successful, but others have really struggled.
Thanks, Lynn. Do we have any questions at all from the floor? Yes, Callum, I can thank you, or online.
Spent time shouting about everything that you're... Sorry, I will do, apologies. So I think I know everybody on the panel, I know your businesses. I wasn't aware of all the great stuff that you've been doing in the background, which clearly says to me that you've been quietly getting on with that and focusing on customers and not shouting about it through PR. So I think that's fantastic, first off. I suppose the question I had was, you've obviously managed to pivot your businesses quite quickly in all cases there. Do you think, and you're all in the kind of SME spectrum, some S, some M, do you think if you'd been part of larger businesses, you would have found that more of a challenge? And have you had an experience of that where, perhaps good examples of large businesses who've managed to pivot quite as quickly as you have?
So I think is the question there, Callum, is about the smaller nature of the business. Has that helped you being agile? Yeah. Who would like to pick that up?
I can have a go. Yeah, I remember my previous employer, who will remain nameless, but I had a friend who was looking to work from home, and I think it took her a solid 15 months to get signed off to do a day a week. And then suddenly you wake up and then everyone was sent home with a laptop. So yeah, I think they found that there was a bit of an onboarding time. So I think that was probably the big difference was, our teams were remote anyway, so it actually worked very well for us. We just all decamped to our spare rooms and everyone was happy. But yeah, there was a bit of a lag because it's just little things like desktop computers, there was a big shortage of laptops for a while. And suddenly you had to do all that. So yeah, I mean, we've all had the frustrations dealing with our banks, trying to get hold of them when they've not quite as seamlessly moved, but you felt that.
Yeah.
And you're just looking at that. So, but yeah, I think for the most part, when you speak to people in sort of bigger businesses, it was about a fortnight where they were just sort of scrambling a little bit, for want of a better word, but didn't look like it on the outside. We had other things to worry about. But then actually, I think a lot of them have quietly surprised themselves, those that can be office-based, quietly surprised themselves like how well it's gone. So yeah, hopefully it'll bring in some changes actually.
Thanks, Christian. And I know, Lynne, you've started your fintech during the pandemic.
Yes.
So has that agile approach helped in that?
It was, first of all, it wasn't intentional. COVID just happened and we were there. So I think it's helped a lot because, we've had I think the focus has been stronger because, you're more focused on being more digital and more digital led and, that adoption of you and your clients as well. So, I think it's helped greatly, during that time, absolutely. But was it a good time to start? Yeah, I think it was. And I think we learned a lot, probably a lot of learning, because a lot of the stats are saying we've came like 7 years ahead of our time now. If we hadn't had, the COVID, we're 7 years ahead of ourselves. And, maybe the SME market and certainly the products that are being offered wouldn't have been so far advanced.
Yeah.
So I think if you're up for digital adoption, you're getting a fantastic scope of products. And you're getting, great onboarding, you're getting the best of tools. I think you're getting serviced really well if you have the appetite.
Okay, it's that mindset.
Yeah.
We do have time for another question from the floor, if there is one, or online. I can see in the middle.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Brian Anderson, thanks very much for your sort of overviews there. My question is around about something you touched on, Lynne, actually, and it's around, as you were talking, and some of the things I've thought over the past year and a half is quite a lot of fintech or tech adoption that's been enabled has been for customers that are already in the journey. So those out with the journey, and construction is the industry I used to be in, is kind of what I was thinking. There's still a lot of cash payment and whatnot there. But also we've got an aging demographic as a country. And you see things like people going to the pub and can't buy a pint because they don't have a phone. Do you think there's a space for fintech to think about these people out with the journey more than we sort of have generally over the past 18 months? Because like I mentioned, a lot of the solutions are for customers kind of in the journey. So it's just a sort of general question to the panel as to, those that aren't sort of on that adoption curve, do we see that being a problem area that we need to think about solutionizing? So if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's about the adoption of the innovation and adoption of these propositions, I think.
Give an example if you want.
Yeah.
Are not within the innovation wheel. Construction cash is really the SME one I was going for. So just how do we see that playing out over the next wee while is kind of the question.
Thank you.
I'll just pick on something, because actually we've had this morning, in fact. We've just been discussing it, and we made changes to our workflow around getting paperwork out for borrowers that included going fully to e-signatures. And we've had an example of an offer out where they can't actually, for some reason, use e-signature. themselves, and we're sort of trying to work that around. So we're actually taking a step back again. We hadn't really thought this through. Hold on a second. Isn't this a good thing that we're making this much more effective and the friction is reduced? Well, not if everybody can't use it for whatever reason it might be. So we're sort of tackling with that. We want to move ahead, but we have to realise that not everybody can move at that pace. So we're probably going to have two different processes there going on. We're just working that through. So you just have to accept we're a bit more nimble and ahead than others of our clients might be able to work at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so well, accessibility is one of the, I suppose, the pivotal values of our company, and one of the reasons that we kind of started was around about providing access. But especially over the last year or so, with our work with the Scottish Government, with the NHS, they were both very conscious of, a fully digital solution would exclude certain people, and it can't be fully digital. So as part of that, we had to look at, improving our accessibility standards on our platform to make sure that people who can use it, it's fully accessible and it's WCAG standards, all these things, but also looking at fallback processes and how we can enable people who maybe don't have a digital solution to still use the process. So that involved for us a lot of positive work and being able to engage with the public sector to look at that and kind of help guide it. But I think it's definitely an area that companies as a whole in the tech sector, need to be aware of. But for us, it's been a really positive experience. As part of that, it's kind of opened their eyes a bit further. I think we were already aware, but it certainly made it, brought it to life a little bit more.
Thank you, Richie. I think 2 minutes. And have you got a question virtually, or you're telling me 2 minutes? Oh. Wonderful. So with the last 2 minutes, then I'd just like to pose my own question to the panel as we think now beyond COVID, as we're all emerging. What's next? Christian, shall we start with you?
Sure. Yeah. So I think I sort of touched on it earlier. Sort of greater appreciation of what tools there are out there, what there are. So I mean, in our own sector, we're looking at the journey from open banking to open finance, and that's, I think, a fantastic thing that the FCA are looking very closely at. And it is about actually giving people access to all their own data. So I think that's going to be amazing for just in terms of people's financial inclusion, how additional tools and sort of the extra data that you can get and understand, and then run your companies more effectively, but then also get better products out there for people. So I think that'll be that for me. Yeah.
Thank you. Stuart, what about you? What's next?
Sorry, do you mean generally in terms of market?
After COVID, yeah.
A big question.
Big question. Quick. Look, I think there's a lot of businesses are clearly doing very well, and we've got to see how long it takes, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to how long it's going to take for other sectors and businesses to catch up. So the next few months is looking positive from a macro perspective, but the signs of weakness still. So I think we're not out of the woods yet, but it's great to see this sort of thing going on again. First event for many people in 18 months, because then people are now genuinely looking forward to 2022 and investment decisions and positivity and moving back out of this again. I think that's going to be the psychological aspect of that is really important, the behaviour that then follows.
Thank you. Richie, what about you?
Yeah, probably the big thing for us, and I could talk about this for hours, so I won't, but is around about the Digital Trust Framework, which is a UK government idea that they are looking to bring in. I suppose what most people would probably be aware of is right to work checks, and during COVID, they've been the rules around them have been relaxed so that you can do it online. Digital Trust Framework has been brought in to bring an online standard to electronic ID verification. I mean that things like buying houses, applying for a job, all these things, there is a standard that can be met electronically to ensure that you have the right to work or you are verified as that person to buy a house for AML purposes. So that will probably come in at some point next year, and for us that'll be probably a bit of a game changer. So I think that's the huge thing on the horizon for us.
Definitely.
If anybody wants to talk about it after, I'm quite happy to.
Okay, we'll come and find you. And Lynne, final 20 seconds for you.
Yeah, I think just the fact we've just launched, so
Absolutely.
for us it's just settling, digging in, but also in a personal note is supporting the SME with the digital adoption. I'm very invested in it. When that way stands the government to try and make sure that happens as quick as possible, and they have the right support.
Wonderful. So if you'd all, I'd just like to say thank you very much, particularly for those of you that stepped in yesterday to join me this morning as we talk about this really important topic of fintech for the future and how we come out of COVID using fintech. I think it's so inspiring to hear that we're helping with the vaccination, we're helping SMEs, we're really thinking about sectors, we're thinking about policy, we're thinking about regulation, and we're thinking about people's financial futures. If that's not encouragement for more fintech innovation, I'm not sure what is. Thank you all very much.
Ask you to thank Nicola